Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be working on deep resting squat mobility. Working on improving the ability to get into a deep resting squat, be able to maintain it for a period of time with comfort, not pain. Real important when doing deep squat work, especially because we're going to be working in those deeper ranges of our squat, that we're paying attention to the rules of pain. No pain over level 2 or over level 3, keeping pain in that 1 to 2, which is slight discomfort, not elevated levels. I don't want it showing up on your face. If you're starting to grimace, something feels off, I want you coming out of the position, finding easier positions. There are alternative movements that you can do instead of the deep squat that will still continue to help improve your deep squat. We're going to be using either yoga wedges like this for elevating the heels, making that allows us to get into our deep resting squat a little easier, or a 2x4. This is a 4-foot long 2x4, nice for elevating the heels. Problem with the 2x4 is it can be a little uncomfortable on the foot if your feet are very sensitive, so the yoga wedges are a little nicer. But those are the primary tools we're going to be working today. And I will make a suggestion if you're having trouble with the deep resting squat, that you can do all the same movements from a chair, doing basically our chair mobility. And if you'd rather go look at the chair mobility video, I will try to remember to put that in the link down below. No promises. Call me out if I don't do it. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start by doing an assessment of our deep resting squat. I kind of want to get a good feel for how it feels in our body before we've actually done a whole lot of movement. If pain is in your body, then I want you to skip this part, save it for the end, and really probably start it on a different video than this one. So using the wedge, I want to put them about hip width apart so we can place both heels roughly. I want the heels on the wedge, but the ball of the foot on the floor. Okay. From that position, you're going to find that your deep resting squat is it should be easy to kind of get down and into it. First thing I kind of want to do is just explore. How low can you go with comfort, without pain, without feeling like you're going to fall backwards or pitch forward? Can you feel weight in your heels? Can you feel weight in the balls of your feet? Can you even feel some weight a little bit side to side? And then taking some nice deep breaths. And then we're going to come out of that, move our wedges off to the side. And now I want to do the same thing, but without the wedges. That way we have a nice comparison of feeling. How does it feel with a little bit of a cheat? The wedges have a little bit of a cheat level to them. Can you do the same thing without the wedges? Sitting into that deep squat. How low are you able to go? Can you take some breath? Do you feel yourself pitching backwards, pitching forwards, side to side? Noticing how does it feel in your body. Without the wedges, I'm a lot more rounded in my back, a little stiffer. I feel like I gotta kind of hold my elbows a little bit more, but I can maintain the position without too much trouble. But it's definitely different. It's not quite as clean. So at the end of the class, we're going to come back and reassess that deep squat without the wedges to see if it has improved. We'll go ahead and come down to the floor into our quadruped, spreading fingers out nice and wide, grounding palms, fingers, all the joint spaces, elbows extended, starting out with our wrist mobility, just simply moving in and out of the wrist space, feeling that load and unload, and comparing how does it feel on the right wrist related to the left wrist. Nice inhale and exhale as we go. As we're bringing in that breath, Remember, I want to kind of bring in that crocodile breath, breathing out 360 degrees in all directions. Nice inhale through the nose, exhale out through the mouth. Turning fingers out to the side, getting some nice slow side to side glide. Again, feeling into that wrist space. Just because we're working on our deep resting squat doesn't mean that there are not aspects of things going on in our upper body that might be contributing to issues within our deep squat. So you got something going on at the wrist, elbow, shoulder, neck, that will impact your deep resting squat. So I want to mobilize and assess what's going on through our upper body and lower body in relationship to how we squat. Turning fingers all the way back towards the knees, grounding palms. Closer the hands are to the knees, the less intense this is. The further out we come, the more intense. Lightly rocking back hips to heels, keeping the palms lightly pressed, feeling that nice loading into the forearm space. I don't want this stretch to be super intense. I want it to be in that nice, comfortable, juicy range. Should feel good without feeling stressful. We'll go ahead and flip the palms upside down to the back side, allowing the elbows to bend to start with, and pressing through the floor to extend the elbows, feeling into that elbow space. Is there a stretch there? If there is, good. I want it to move into that stretch and then soften, and then into that stretch and soften. If you're able to get the elbows to fully extend without stress and discomfort, then we can rock back hips to heels. Again, comparing how does the right wrist feel related to the left wrist. We can then come off our wrists a little bit, get a little flow back into them, make sure that we're not stressing them out. And then we're going to focus on the toes. So coming back to quadruped, tucking the big toes. I want to load them fully underneath and turn the heels as far in towards each other as you can. And from here, we're lightly sitting the weight of the hips into the big toe joint, feeling that load, and then letting our weight come forward. And then sitting back and feeling that load into the big toe joint. Can you feel that big toe joint stretch? Can you feel some of that stretch start to move into the arch of the foot? As you're going back and forth, inhale, coming forward, exhale as you softly and slowly sink. The slower you go, the better on this, because I want to get real sensitive into that big toe joint space as well as the arch of the foot to notice if there's a difference on one side compared to the other. Any kind of imbalance between the big toes will be something that is impacting the deep resting squat. So I want to get a good sense and feel for it. Next, we're going to turn our heels all the way out and see if you can get tucked underneath at the pinky toe. If you're able to get that tuck underneath, we're sitting back hips to heels in the exact same way and then rocking forward. Weight of the hips sinking into that outside edge of the foot. Can you feel that stretching up into the lateral arch of the foot? Inhale, coming forward. Exhale, coming back. With each one, seeing if you can sink just a little bit different or a little bit deeper. Then on the next one, as we sink back, kind of sink halfway back, and now we're going to do some windshield wipers, allowing the heels to roll all the way in and all the way back out. This is bringing that movement across the big toe joint and then all the way back out to the pinky toe, and we're getting some mobilization of all the smaller bones in the foot at the same time. Notice the difference on the right foot compared to the left foot. Do you feel more stretch at the knuckles of the foot? Do you feel it more in the arch of the foot? Maybe you feel it into the calves. Is it tighter, more restricted? Is it a little bit uncomfortable on one side compared to the other? That's going to be really important as far as our assessing our deep resting squat. Coming back into just our normal quadruped, I want to keep the toes lightly tucked and engaged, but now we're going to get into our pelvic tilts. Getting a nice scoop into the pelvis and then tilting the pelvis forward. This is a great place to bring back our focus of our breath. Nice inhale into the belly as your belly moves to the floor, getting into this nice sway back. As you scoop, exhale, drawing the navel into spine. The way you pull that belly in on your exhale is going to help with your scoop. Nice big inhale, going forward towards the floor, exhale, scoop. I'm keeping my upper body fairly still. I'm not doing a full cat-cow. I'm just doing the pelvic tilts. So as I scoop, I kind of want to feel that stretch get pulled up to my ribs. And since I'm not moving my upper body, my ribs kind of feel stiff. So I get to pull and stretch a little bit on that low back area. The inhale, again, fill up that abdominal space. Can you feel some stretch related to the expansion of that breath as you go into the more cow position? As you're going back and forth on this, notice how it feels in that low back. If you are getting stretch, do you feel it more on the right side of the spine, or do you feel it more on the left side of the spine, or is it fairly even? Now we're going to start to allow that movement to move up the rest of the spine. So as you scoop, kind of free the ribs, pressing into the floor, continue to scoop. Feel that movement go up into the shoulders and then over the top of the head and around the forehead. And I want to imagine that I'm trying to touch forehead to my tailbone. I'm still scooping actively, trying to touch at this imaginary point right in the middle. And then the pelvis goes the other way, pulling each vertebrae one at a time. As it gets to the chest and sternum, the chest drops down towards the floor and the head comes up last. I want to see if we can find that nice wave-like action generated from the pelvis, moving up the spine, head last, moving in and out of that wave. How smooth can you feel that wave move up your spine? Are you noticing any particular areas or segments of that wave where it feels a little stiffer and a little bit more restrictive? It might be in the low back. You might feel it up into the thoracic. You might feel it up into the neck. Just being sensitive to it. And if you're feeling any that kind of restriction, it's a great place to breathe into it and try to move slowly through it. Can you expand into it without forcing it and without taking it into pain? Next, we're going to bring hands all the way forward as far as you can. Nice spread out fingers as wide as you can. And I want nice pancake downward pressing hands. Elbows are active and straight. I'm really pushing down into the floor here. I want to try to keep the hips over the knees if possible. If you tend to have shoulder pain and hip pain or low back pain, then it's okay for the hips to come back a little bit. If you don't have pain, the further your hips are over the top of the knees, the more you're going to put some load into the shoulders, which is what I want to get a good assessment on. So with those downward pressing hands, getting a little bit of a scoop, tuck in the pelvis. I want to kind of get that little scoop in order to engage the core, and then maintaining that scoop as we drop the sternum to the floor. And exhale. Inhale, coming back up. Exhale, nice, slow, maintaining your scoop. Reach your sternum down. I am continuing to maintain good, solid downward pressure through my hands. And I'm feeling into the armpit area of my shoulders, noticing how does this feel on the left side compared to the right side? Does one side stretch more? Is it stiffer? Is it achier? Maybe one side feels as you get down that it's pressing harder than the other side, or the other side feels like it disengages. Those are really important things to pay attention to. If you're feeling a difference between one shoulder and the other shoulder, that is something that will impact squat mechanics. So I want to start to notice what's going on neck and shoulder related to our ability to squat well. All right, we're going to get into our shin box. Shin box, obviously one of my favorite positions. I use it every class. It's a phenomenal position to play with as far as opening up hip mobility to improve a deep resting squat. So on my left side, left hand is down, grounded, spiral that elbow, feeling the chest kind of open up to the ceiling as that shoulder packs down. And we're working that front of the hip, pivoting into the knee, allowing that hip to roll off the floor and extending that hip bone forward. Seeing if you can feel some light lengthening through the front of the hip. Might feel like some stretch. If you feel some stretch, I want to move into that stretch on the exhale. Inhale, letting it soften. Exhale, moving into it. And seeing if you can go a little bit further on each one. And on this, as we're pressing that hip forward, I'm even trying to get a little bit of that light scoop, moving the tailbone, scooping it through, just like our cat-cow when you're kind of tucking that pelvis on the exhale. See if you can feel that scoop. That should accentuate that length through the front of the hip a little bit, and it should help you feel a little bit more engagement in your glute in the back. And then we'll go ahead and shift over to the other side, doing the same thing. Grounded palm, spiral to elbow, open chest, packed shoulder, pivoting through that back knee. Man, left hip is a little tight today. Notice the difference in the hips. Just like I want to pay attention to the shoulders for my squat, hips being tight is going to be an obvious factor in our deep resting squat. So if you got a difference in one side to the other, I want to notice it, because noticing it means that I can now put some extra work into it. And simple work being repetition. I want to work on, can I get this to move more? I don't want to force it. I just want to move it. Again, as we're moving that hip bone forward, can we add a little element of scoop of the tailbone into it to kind of draw that stretch out and to feel a little bit more engagement through the glutes. This one feels good and juicy, and since it's so useful and valuable with our deep squat, I want to come back and do both sides again. We can just do 3 to 5 more gentle reps, seeing if do we have a little bit more range the second time around? So I want to play with that. Can we continue to move into it? Can we feel that glute engage even more on each one? Nice inhale, moving into that exhale, and then we'll go to the other side and do the same thing again. My left hip still tighter than the right, but it's more mobile than it was that first time around. I can definitely get a little bit more range, and even as I do this through the, a few more times, I can feel it opening up a little bit more. This is the benefit of doing things not forcefully and working with our breath, is the nervous system tends to give you a little bit more range as we go. All right, we're going to shift into a V-sit position. Wide as we can go. I want to actively extend the knees, reaching the knees straight down through the floor, reaching the heels straight out, and actively pulling the dorsum of the foot back like you're trying to touch the front of the shin. Hands can come down to ground. If they do, I want to spiral elbows out so that we get that nice opening up of the chest. And I want to maintain that throughout. Now I want to focus on the knees for right now. We're going to do our spirals, rotating the knee as far out as it will go, and then rotating the kneecap as far in as it will go. We're feeling this all the way up deep into the hip socket, but I'm focusing on moving at the knee. Again, actively straightening the knee, actively pulling the dorsum of the feet back like you're trying to fold your feet back into your shins, and spiraling as far out as you can. I want to squeeze in to those end ranges, spiraling in as far as you can, squeezing into it. As you're doing this, notice the range of motion that your knees pass through. When you move outwardly, externally, does your right knee and left knee go the same distance, or does one go a little farther? When you spiral internally, does one go a little farther, and is one a little bit limited? And is there a stiffness and restriction associated with that difference? Again, little things. It may not be a big difference. I just simply want to get an awareness of it. I want to notice it. Next, we're going to start to do some circles through the ankles. So we're still spiraling knees. As we spiral knees out, we get to release, press through the toes, really trying to extend the toes further. You can even slightly flex the toes as long as it doesn't give you a Charlie horse in the arch. Turning that circle all the way in, and then opening and spreading the toes as we pull the foot back and round back out, making a nice big circle. And really I want to feel this kind of like a flossing action around the ankle joint, continuing to feel it deep up in the hip socket, but also that nice just like again, flossing is the best description I have for how that feels around the ankle itself. And then we're going to reverse directions, continuing to do the same thing. Let those feet and ankles just move. Each one I'm trying to maintain as big of a circle through the internal, external rotation of the knees, and then the circle of the ankle. We'll come back to keeping the feet straight up, pulling the dorsum of the foot back, actively straightening the knees. Now we're going to bring our hands forward and we're going to work a little bit of forward fold work. I want to tie this well into breath. So as we inhale, we're coming back up. As we exhale, we're folding and reaching. I like to think about hands as just the wave moving up a beach. As I exhale, we're moving up to the crest. As we inhale, we're receding back. As we're doing this, we're feeling into that back line of the legs, hamstring, back of the knees, calves. Does it feel different on the right side compared to the left? Is one side a little stiffer? Is one side a little have less range of motion? You may find that one side feels tighter on the outside of the hamstring, the other side feels tighter on the inside of the hamstring. They may feel just as tight, but they're just in different locations on each side. Even that kind of information can be very, very useful. Right now, I just want it to be interesting. It doesn't have, there's not a whole lot that we're doing with it, taking that information in. Now I want to start to move a little bit side to side, moving towards the right heel, moving towards the left heel. As we're moving side to side, let your chest turn. See if you can feel that rotation from your back, then reach. Trying to keep your chest and sternum square with your hands as you reach from side to side. We can take this all the way to the heels, side to side. Again, feeling the difference. How does it feel when you go to the left side compared to when you go to the right side? Do you have more range of motion on one side than you do on the other? Can you get deeper into it? We can even go beyond the heel and reach on the outside of the leg. I don't want to force any of these positions, but I do want to explore. When I go outside my knee, that's really when I notice more imbalance. I can reach to my right side without too much trouble. When I come to my left side, I feel stiffness in that low back, a lot tighter on that right side as I reach to my left. Again, useful information. All right, we're going to come back into our shin box. And now we're going to get into some folds in our shin box so that we can get into the back of the hip. I want to use the knee as the arrow, placing hands perfectly even on the outside of that knee so that we can push through our hands in order to get even pressure and square the chest as much as you can to the floor. I want to feel this as a rotation so that I can kind of notice it in the low back area. If it's tight, you're going to notice it. If it's not tight, it's going to be easy. It's going to feel fine. From here, as we exhale, we're slightly dropping that sternum through that knee, trying to maintain a square chest to the floor, then reaching hands through that knee. Again, trying to maintain that square chest. Inhale at the end, exhale, softly reach a little further. On the next inhale, we're going to bring it all the way up and go across to the other side. Same thing on the other side, placing hands equally around the knee and squaring the chest. Notice if there's a difference in how this side feels. Is it easy to get into that squared position? Is it more challenging than it was on the other side? Exhale, dropping the sternum through that knee, maintaining a square chest, and then reaching both hands, maintaining that square chest. Nice deep breath in. On the exhale, reaching a little bit deeper, and then bringing it all the way up. We're going to go back and forth on this. Each one for the first 3 to 5 reps, really work on feeling that rotation and staying square. That way you can get a good sense and feel for how this movement feels on the left side compared to the right side. Again, these kind of differences from one side to the other are very relevant, especially for unlocking the deep resting squat. I want to say like unlocking the secrets to the deep resting squat. It is kind of a secret. As we're going back and forth, as you get that information, noticing the difference, now we can start to play with that back leg, allowing that back knee to open up, changing our hip position. At this point, I'm less concerned about the knee as the arrow and maintaining that square chest. And now we're just get to explore. We can reach straight forward. We can continue to reach out to the knee. We can reach back behind the knee, or we can go against the grain and reach back across the body. This is a great move to go into from our shin box as we're opening it up. But whatever you do on one side, I want to make sure we do it on the other side. So again, we can go straight forward. We can stay around, moving through that arrow of the knee. We can reach back behind the knee, and we can go against the grain, where it's like, my body gets really clunky and congested here. But you may find this feels different on one side than it does on the other. You may notice some kind of interesting tightness, tension on one side that you didn't notice in those other stretches or those other positions. Continue to go slow with your breath. And we're continuing to open up that back knee a little bit more on each one. Until we get into what we would consider a little bit more of a yoga class pigeon pose, which I'm still not overly worried about getting into that full end range pose. I'm more curious about the exploration of the movements up to that pose. So if you get focused on that end range pigeon pose, I would suggest taking a little bit of that focus off. And notice the difference as you're going from side to side. Notice the difference in your hips. Do you get a bigger stretch or have more restriction in your glutes on one side compared to the other? Do you notice this back hip feels tighter on one side than it does on the other? My left side, more pigeon, especially as I open up, is a lot more open and available than my right side. I feel more stretch through my glute space. I actually have some congestion in that right hip at the moment. And I feel that tightness in the right side low back. So I want to get the more I get these things loosened up, the more it's going to improve my deep resting squat when we come back to it. All right, so now we're going to work up to do our shin box up to knees. With glutes, I want to make sure I got some good, with deep resting squat, I want to make sure we got some good glute activation going. So our shin box to knees is a nice activator for the glutes. Want to make sure that we're not moving through knee pain, so I don't want to start by just popping up. I want to use hands, one hand behind, one hand in the front, and I'm using as much of my weight through my arms to assist in order to move through my knee space in a way that doesn't hurt. As we get up to the top, we can kind of get that light scoop of the pelvis, get some stretch, and then feel our hands to move back down to the floor. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side, guiding it through, coming up, feel into it, get that nice scoop, good stretch, and then guide down. If the knees feel sensitive, but that's not painful, I'd suggest going through this movement using your hands. Don't try to take the hands off. I don't want to put stress on the knees if the knees are already tend to be stressful or tend to be painful. If you got good, healthy knees, and you can do this without pain and without using hands, then that's where we're going to let go to that kind of that next point in the movement. I want to try to drive evenly through both knees into the floor, pulling the hips up. As we get up, we're getting that nice scoop. Again, feel that stretch. But on the way down, I don't want to just drop down. I want to reach back. I'm trying to slide my hip as far back as it will go before it kisses the ground. And I don't want to plop. If you're plopping, that means you don't have neurological control of that last range of motion, which means you need to use your hands. You need to use your hands to guide in and kiss the bottom to the floor and then come back up into driving up. I don't want that plop. I want to use the hands in order to train the neurology so that you can regain that last little bit of control, because that last little bit of control is going to get some really nice glute activation. We can do 5 to 10 on each side. You can do 5 on one side, 5 on the other side, going back and forth. You can do just going 1 back and forth 5 to 10 times. I don't want to do 10 on one side, 10 on the other side, unless you've had a couple of times back and forth to make sure that it's not painful. There's no issues on one side compared to the other. But I do want to really feel this nice reach back. Can you feel that stretch into the glutes as you kiss your bottom to the floor and then popping back up? Can you feel that glute active, getting into that stretch in the front? And then can you feel that stretch through the glute as you reach back? We can even add another layer to this to really draw out that activating stretch in the glute. As you're reaching back through the glutes, you can reach forward like you're extending your fingers forward and continuing to reach back. That should draw that stretch out a little bit more. Really feeling that glute work. Again, I want to do that on both sides. All right, so now we are going to come all the way up into a standing position. I want to go through our step under progressions. The way I think about step under progressions is you're going for a hike in the woods and you come across a fallen tree. You can either go over it, you can go under it, or maybe it's a barbed wire fence. More likely you're going to go under it. How do you go under that barbed wire fence without getting stuck? You got to be able to get low, reach across, glide through the hips in order to stand up on the other side. And I want to be able to do that in both directions because that shows that I have some balance through the hips. But that's a fairly complex movement, especially if you have back pain, hip pain, knee pain. So I want to start a little bit more simply. We're going to go with a nice wide stance. Feet are facing forward. Watch out for the foot wanting to turn out as you go. I want to maintain both feet forward. We're also going to work on tripod foot. So we're going to be going side to side. As my weight goes to the side, I want to maintain pressure through the ball of the pinky toe to the outside of this foot. I don't want my foot to roll and lose that contact. So I have to be very actively loading that pinky toe as I'm moving away from it. So we'll start our side to side. The other thing I want to watch out for here is I want to feel the weight of my hip sitting back, loading into my heel. So I feel that weight at the heel. It's not going to pick up the ball of my feet, but I'm going to feel pretty loaded. I don't want my knee shifting forward to where my heel gets soft and starts to lift off the floor. I want to feel that weight in the heel. That's important when it comes to the deep resting squat. You need to be able to load into the heels. So we're going side to side, active pinky toe, coming all the way up to the other side. Feel into the adductor space, inside of the thigh. How does it feel on the left side compared to the right side? Are you able to go as low? You find that one side you can go deeper than you can on the other side. If that's feeling pretty good and you don't have pain, the next thing we're going to work on is glide. So if you got one side that's higher than the other, go to the side that's higher. We're not going to go to the deeper side. At that depth, we're going to maintain that height, and we're going to see if we can glide all the way across to the other side. As I glide across, I'm coming to that active pinky toe. All the way through to the other side, feel that grounded pinky toe. Notice how the more you're able to keep the feet grounded, it draws that length and stretch out through the adductor space. It should feel good and juicy. Excellent. All right. So now we're going to get all the way back down on the floor, and we're going to go through some baby roll stretch. I'm only going to work on two parts of the baby roll stretch, both from laying on our back. Generally, I have 4 parts. We can get into the supine position and work a lot of the same stuff. All great stuff. I'm just focusing on 2 today. Arms are going to come up overhead in kind of a Y position. I want elbows to be softly on the ground. If you're finding your arm wants to kind of hang and not touch the ground, bring your arms out as wide as feels comfortable in order to get that soft shoulders on the ground. If you got shoulder pain, this may be an area where I want you to do some other kind of rotational movement and not stress out the shoulders. You know, it's a good place to contact me if you got shoulder pain. So from here, I want inhale into this position. So each time we come into this position, we are inhaling nice and full crocodile breath. Exhale. I am taking my hand and my head, lifting and reaching across the body as far as I can without losing contact with my heels. So my heel remains in contact as I'm reaching, seeing how far can I get my fingertips to reach. Once I get here, nice deep breath in, full exhale out. On the next inhale, coming back to the center and doing the same thing on the other side. How far can you reach without the heel lifting up? Nice inhale, exhale, reach a little further, softly, non-forcefully. Inhale, coming back. Notice how as we reach, the hip has to lift up off the floor. I want you to do a few of these back and forth and just feel how your body does it, one side to the other. On the next time through both sides, put the focus of noticing what your body does into your heels. Are you pushing hard into your heel in order to move your head and hand forward? Or can you move your head and hand without any weight load whatsoever? Your heels are completely soft. I want heels soft. How much can you move through the upper body without pushing into that heel? Nice breath in. Can you do the same thing on the other side? Or do you notice that one heel wants to act more than the other one? If so, see if you can kind of breathe in and soften that heel. Can you get the movement to be more upper body? Once you're doing that, you may notice some other areas of tension and restriction, which is fine. That's a good thing. The next thing I want to pay attention to are the hips. As I'm reaching across, that hip is lifting, but I don't want to lift my hip and then reach. I want my hips to get lifted by the reach. I kind of want my hips to kind of remain suspended in gravity. So as I get up here, can I let the hips soften back down? It's going to create a little bit of a traction stretch. So it draws the stretch out the opposite direction from where I'm reaching. How does that feel? Right side to left side. Does one hip soften easier or better than the other hip? And when you get that one hip that's a little stiffer to soften, do you get do you feel a bigger stretch? And where is that stretch? Again, all really good, helpful information. Now we're going to switch and reach from our legs. So again, arms are still up in this nice Y, elbows are soft on the ground. And we're going to do a similar thing, but we're doing it through feet. So I'm going to lift my leg up. I kind of want to keep my leg off the floor a little bit. I don't want it to drop down because that can create some pinch in my hip or my low back. So I'm keeping it a little bit elevated. And I like to think I'm reaching through the toes. So my toes are really extending away. And I'm seeing how far can I reach without some part of my hand remaining in contact with the floor. Nice inhale. Exhale, softly reach a little further. On the next inhale, bringing it back to center. Same thing to the other side. Nice reach. I want to start out by just simply going side to side. As you're reaching across, the back of the hand kind of stays in contact with the floor. The shoulder blade itself is allowed to lift up. But just like with the feet, I want to make sure that you're not lifting with the shoulder first and then reaching. I want that reach of the toes to pull the hips, which then pulls the shoulder off the floor. But we're only going as far as we're still maintaining a soft contact with the floor. Going back and forth. Noticing how does this feel through the hips and the low back and up into the chest on each side. Does one side feel different than the other side? Does one shoulder feel a little stiffer, or does it have a little achiness to it? Again, That's that shoulder and how it's going to be impacting our squat mechanics. We'll come back to center, and we're going to stand up, and we're going to grab our wedges. And real quick, I want to bring out the 2x4 just to show how it can be used as well. So if you got a 2x4, exact same thing that we're doing with the wedge, heels on the 2x4, balls of the feet on the floor, roughly hip width apart. Position of the toes. Ideally, I want to be able to do feet forward, but it's okay for the toes to come out a little bit if needed, as long as there's not pain or stress. So that's it for using that guy. I'm going to go ahead and use our wedges. So heels on the wedge, ball of the feet are on the floor. We're going to come back and explore deep resting squat. Now we're going to do a lot of movement from the deep resting squat at this point. I can stay in the deep squat for a good period of time without too much stress. I may come up a little bit if I'm feeling it in my knees. I want you to stand up, get relief anytime if you're feeling any kind of stress, feet, knees, hips, back. You don't need to stay in the position throughout. I talk a lot, it takes me a lot longer. I really am looking at getting maybe 5 to 10 reps of each movement from each position. So if you got your 5 and you're done and you're like, I don't want to stress it out, stand up and watch for the next part. And again, all of these movements can be done from a chair if the deep squat is bothersome for the knees or the hips, or you just can't get into the position right now. So first thing is we're going back and exploring that nice deep resting squat position. I want to bring my elbows to the inside of the knees and lightly press out with the elbows and lightly squeeze in with the knees. Not a massive brace, but just kind of a little gentle brace. And we're coming back into our crocodile breath. 5, 6 nice big breaths in through the nose, getting that expansion out through our abdominal space, and then exhale, drawing navel into spine. Since we're in a deep squat, I'm going to add another little cue here. Our crocodile breath, generally we're working on expanding out. Since we're in a deep squat, I also want to feel that breath moving down as if it's expanding into the pelvic bowl. I want to feel some stretch into the pelvic floor with that expansion into our abdominal space. Doesn't have to feel massive. I'm not trying to force it. But on the exhale, we're drawing that navel in, and you may feel a little clench. I don't want to be actively clenching, just noticing. How's that breath work? In and out. Is there areas where you're feeling some restriction of that breath? Maybe in the low back, maybe primarily on one side. After we get through our 5 or 6 breaths, again, stand up, shake it out, check in, make sure it's not stressing out the hips, the knees, or the low back. Then we're going to drop back in. And now we're going to work a little hip mobility. So I'm moving one knee out at a time, just kind of seeing how far can I reach that knee out and then bring it back in, and same thing to the other side. Can you feel that mobilizing deep in the hip socket? As I'm doing this, as we're doing this, don't allow your weight to shift forward. Keep some weight in the heels on that wedge. Notice the difference, right side to left side. And I want to squeeze into that movement. I'm squeezing that knee out, maintaining good stability through the other foot. Again, after 5 or 6, standing up, checking back in, make sure that the body's not stressing out in this position. I'm going to change my viewpoint. Everything is still the same. Now we're going to do cat-cows from our deep squat. So, bringing back the breath Inhale, inflates the belly. Exhale, draws the navel to spine. As we exhale, I want to scoop. Feel that low, the pelvis scoop underneath. As we inhale, feel it go back forward. And notice how it kind of lifts your head and shoulders tall. Exhale, feel that scoop. Can you feel some stretch into that low back? Mild stretch. May not even be stretch. Can you just feel mobility into that low back area? As we're doing this, now I want to add in a little reach. As you're scooping, see if you can reach your fingertips forward. Notice how that rounds your upper back. On the inhale, you're going to bring your arms back, spiral your palms up towards the floor like you're trying to open up your chest. Inhale nice and open. Exhale, scoop and reach. Again, feeling into any differences in tension, right side of the body, left side of the body. I can feel this nicely into that right side low back. I want to stay in that juicy nature with it. I'm not being forceful. I'm simply playing in this space. We'll come back up. Again, kind of checking in, shaking it out, making sure that we're not overstressing anything. As we come back into it, now I want to stack the hands on the floor in front. The hand that's on top, we're going to open that arm up, looking up to the ceiling. I don't want this arm to fan out to the side. I want my elbow tight to the ear. I'm bringing that arm straight up like I'm trying to kiss my ear with my upper arm, and I'm looking up to my fingertips, staring up to the ceiling. Inhale, switch hands. Exhale, keep that elbow tight as you open up to the ceiling, going back and forth. This is a big opening stretch, kind of moving through that lumbar and thoracic area. We're trying to get some nice thoracic extension in relationship to that lower back. So you may feel some big opening stretch, especially connecting our breath into that reach. Notice if it feels different, left arm compared to right arm. This is a good place to compare what you're feeling different in your shoulder related to this. Where did you notice it in your wrist mobility? Where did you notice it in your child's pose? Where did you notice it in any of the other movements? Maybe in the baby rolls. We'll kind of come back out. Again, shake the legs out a little bit. Make sure that we're not overstressing them. And then the last movement for our mobility is going to be working on rotation. I think I want to change my position again. So, with rotation, if you can, we're seeing if we can place a hand on the floor, kind of to the side or a little bit behind you, and then turning and rotating like you're trying to reach behind your shoulder, and bringing that across and doing the same thing on the other side. Notice how if you're able to place that hand down, that kind of loads you a little bit more into the heels. Feel that weight in your heels as you're reaching back. But don't let yourself lose the ball of the feet. Keep your load in contact. I want to continue to maintain our tripod connection, even though we're using a wedge. And this is a great place to notice, how does that, this rotation feel on one direction as compared to that other direction? When I rotate towards my right, super easy. As I rotate to my left, that right side low back is still a little tighter and more restricted, although it's feeling a lot more mobile than it did at the beginning of the session. So we can go ahead and stand up, kick our wedges off to the side. Again, get a nice, shake the legs out a little bit. And now we're gonna come back and reassess our deep squat to compare it from where we began at. And hopefully you're gonna notice that you can get into it a little bit easier and you can maintain it a little bit easier. So, feet are basically in the same position, sitting back into it. I have a lot less rounding of my shoulders. I was here at the beginning of the class. You know, I got a little bit of improvement. I feel like I got my chest up and I can look up a little bit more. My legs are a little fatigued. We did a good amount of work, so I'm not going to sit in it too long. I can also feel some stretch in through the hips. So hopefully that's a good assessment to notice how doing some deep mobility work from that deep resting squat can help to open up the deep squat altogether. Those particular movements were powerful in helping my deep resting squat. I was working on a deep resting squat for like 7 months and wasn't getting a whole lot of success when I was introduced to that series of movement. And within a few weeks, I was able to hold a deep resting squat for a minute or longer. And now a deep resting squat is fairly easy for me. Let's come into a nice, comfortable seated position. Go ahead and close eyes. Since we did a lot of deep squat work, I want to come back and put our focus back into breath and get a nice little assessment just to make sure that our body is kind of tuned in and not overly stressed. Bringing it back into our crocodile breath. We can bring in our C shapes with our hands pressing below the ribs and above the hip bone and squeezing into the abdominal space with the index finger, side body with the side palm and thumb into that low back. As you exhale, pulling navel into spine, let your hands softly squeeze in to create some resistance. And then on your inhale, feel that abdominal wall press out evenly into all 6 of those points of contact. On the inhale, exhale, feel it soften and allow your hands to squeeze, creating resistance. Notice if you're able to get that expansion to move evenly through all 6 points of contact on your inhale. Or do you notice that 1 or 2 segments or points of contact don't inflate? You can't push into that resistance of your finger or your side palm as well on one side compared to the other. If you notice that, simply put some energy into your breath to see if you can get some action into that area. It doesn't need to be forceful. I want to stay soft with it. And more than, this is something that will take time to develop the neurology to. If you're feeling like you can't access a certain space, you're not going to fix it in any one breath practice. It takes days and weeks and months to get that area to expand, which makes this a really good practice to do every day. Spending a little bit of time doing some crocodile breath. You can let your hands start to soften and continue to maintain that breath. And as you're doing so, let's come back to that sense of breathing down into that bowl of the pelvis. Since we just had that in our practice with the deep squat, can you bring it back into a seated position? We're still breathing out into our crocodile breath, but we're also breathing down into our pelvic floor. On that exhale, nice big forced exhale all the way out. And last bit, I want to notice on our inhale, any tension in the neck, shoulders. We're breathing into that tension, expanding out on it like a balloon. so that when we exhale and we soften, we can feel that tension just kind of get rinsed off our neck and shoulders down to the floor. So breathing into tension, exhale, letting that tension just get rinsed off with our breath. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes.